All right, good evening. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Board of Education April 23rd, 2024 regular meeting. I will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will turn things over to our superintendent, Ms. Fox-Alter, for an update.
All right, so thank you, everybody. First of all, I'd like to wish happy Passover and a wonderful Seder to all who are celebrating this season. Clearly, there's beautiful weather for this celebration. I saw some families last night before they sat down for Seder, out walking, out talking, out visiting. So again, we wish everyone a happy Passover. I want to say congratulations to our high school engineering students who returned home from quite the trip from attending the first robotics competition in Houston, Texas. I want to also personally give a shout out to our parents who helped support our students, who volunteered, who took time off from work to do this. We didn't have enough teachers to cover it, so that was really important. And I understand, Roger, we had a plane that landed very late last night because I got a text. So I want to also give a huge shout out to Lisa Holmes and folks in the district office who, when their kid's flight got canceled for half the crew, right, Alita, we don't want to, we had, and the airline was only emailing and sending hotel information and flight rescheduling information to the person on the purchase order, not the 11 kids, the 2 teachers, and the adults standing them at the ticket counter in Houston. So, but a lot of people came together and made it work, and we want to appreciate. So thank you, Alita, to everyone in your office, to you who, you were on it Sunday night. We were all working together, and again, thank you. It is sad to know that there was a tragedy down there during the first robotics competition. A student from the state of Michigan had a death by suicide. I trouble talking about that without. So our thoughts, prayers, and hearts go out to that student and their family, and the importance of providing a compassionate circle of care to our staff and to our students once they were there down in Houston and when they came back. So I want to thank Principal Langley, DeCelia, and the team also for providing those services for our students and staff, which will be ongoing. Okay. Students have been taking part in a number of enriching Earth Day activities throughout our schools. I know in the district office we were doing some Earth Day quizzes. I think I failed 2 of them. We'll keep that secret here, but anyway, all ways to learn and understand. Congratulations to the Ossining High School baseball team who defeated Byram Hills 8-0 in a shutout in the Christian Federico Championship game. I understand this championship game is held in honor and memory of a student who is no longer with us, but it's been around for a good number of years, so I'm delighted that it's still being held. Owen Brennan pitched a complete shutout game, and Michael Levinson took home the most valuable player trophy. We had an OHS Envirothon team. So proud of them for being named first in Westchester County and advancing to the state. So again, outstanding work by our high school students. Not to be overshadowed, though, by Claremont. They showcased their creativity and scientific curiosity with an amazing projects at the Claremont Science Fair. So the exhibits were out of this world. I want to thank you for the Ossining Police Department once again for partnering with the AMD Drone Club. We were talking about our P-Tech work and different things with some of our partners. Drone repair is going to be an up-and-coming job in the future, and there's no reason why kids can't pick up that skill set while they're at Ossining Middle School, AMD, and at the high school. So more work along those lines. Just a couple of events on May 1st here, 5:45 for the AMD 8th grade families. We're asking you to come to the auditorium for our New York Gear Up and P-Tech workshop program. We hope to have filled that auditorium, right, Maria? Yes. Right, and we're going to have the CUNY Creative Arts team followed by an opportunity to get acquainted with our partners in the P-Tech program. And we are serving pizza, right, to everyone.
What was the date of that again?
That is May 1st. May 1st. Okay. 5:45 at the high school auditorium. Okay. We do have our prom drive taking place. Everyone check out your closets, take a look at the old prom dresses or just in things that you might have worn last year, but you don't have an event coming up, and maybe their shoes, dresses, suits, ties, and more can be dropped off here at 400 Executive Boulevard. We have our spring concerts coming up, orchestra on the 24th, band on the 30th, and vocal night on May 22nd. And don't forget, Ossining Matters has their Flower Power Spring fundraiser. Please select a beautiful selection of plants and flowers to brighten up your home or your garden in order to help support a very worthwhile cause. A couple of other things. I just, sent just part of my update, an email to the board asking for a switch of some topics on May 1st, better alignment with state testing, getting more data for our elementary principals, and being able to give a facilities update on the first, work at Park, taking a look at our child safety zone report that we asked folks to do, and our energy performance contract work for this summer. So I think there'll be a lot of timely information there. And lastly, I just want to, I shared an article with Annie. I know at the last board meeting we had a conversation and discussion about cell phone usage, and the #1 book this week actually on the New York Times bestsellers list is The Anxious Generation. I'd love to, have a book club, a book talk, but I did get from our library a copy of the Atlantic Monthly's article on this, which I will be sharing with the board. So I would love to sit down and have a conversation about how we can just make folks aware. There were some really important things, and I know my superintendents are talking about this topic as well. So lots of really great information here as we move forward. So that's my superintendent's update.
Thank you. I think we'll go ahead and move right into the superintendent's budget overview.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me
Good
okay?
evening. Yep.
So this is the final budget presentation before we go formally out to vote. We also have a hearing that's coming up, but tonight, mostly all school districts in New York State, Board of Education will be adopting their budget. Today is the deadline, so we're doing the same thing tonight. So this is just a brief overview. You've seen this slideshow before, but we've only put in or left in the relevant slides. So as we look at the timeline, we'll see that we're getting towards the end. Next month is the time in which we have our budget vote. We can talk about staff increases and grants, so you can see some of the changes that happened over the past 4 years and what we anticipate for 2025. We modified our revenue projections with the 3.28% tax levy increase. We also did our capital exclusion calculation, which I went over. And then finally, the board is tasked to adopt the budget tonight. So, like I said, tonight is the day for the budget adoption, and then we have our budget hearing, and finally our budget vote. So actually, it's odd, because after tonight, you can't change the budget. Even though you can have a hearing, the budget stays the same. So Illy has the most recent up-to-date budget figure, and unfortunately, after tonight, that budget number cannot change. So this is just an overview of some of the staff in the grants, mostly the COVID grants and some of our title grants. But overall, the amount of positions, the salary worth is 2.1. That is no longer going to be within the budget for next year. So this is an overview of the revenue projections. You'll see, as we discussed before, that we have increased our projections for our sales tax. We have increased our projections for our interest earnings. And this is really based on information we received yesterday as well. As many of you know, foundation aid went down by $47,000 or so. And so we reached out to Questar, and we've talked about this before. Questar, the state bases their information when they first come out with their projections on a form that we fill out at the end of the school year, and it's due by September. So we project what the enrollment is going to be. There's a separate attendance module that we go into, and we project what enrollment is. So when they went and did the state aid runs from the governor's budget, they used those figures from the ST3. So when they got to adopt the state budget, they update those numbers, and our attendance was lower by 9 students. So that's why it was reduced. So as you can see, the formula, the foundation aid formula, is still running. So the second set of data that they based it on was beds day data. So that's taken in October. So that's why there was a minor decrease in foundation aid, and our revenue projections reflect that minor decrease.
If I can add to that for a moment, one of our requests of our elected officials is the fact that, so you take a snapshot on Beds Day, which stands for Basic Educational Data Systems Day, and it's the first Wednesday in October. But if you get, let's say, an additional 100 kids in the year that you're in, you're not getting funding for that year. They lock it in on Beds Day. So we're short $47,000 because there was a 9-student difference between what we calculated at the end of the year and who showed up on Beds Day. You know, like what our enrollment looked like on that snapshot at that moment, at that space and time. So I do know in the city of New York, they allow au courant updates based on enrollment and money. And it would be nice if that did get applied to some suburban schools. So next week, I'm on a legislative panels. That's going to be one of my asks. And this is a perfect example of it. Roger?
Yeah. Just a really quick clarifying question. What happens in a situation, and this is not something you're going to necessarily know off the top of your head, it might be, but what happens if there was like even a much larger like influx of students that come in? Like, let's say if that was like, I'm making this up, be a little extreme about it, 500 students. That's like a penalty to the district in essence because of that Beds Day, right? And that's essentially what happens. And is there like an appeals process to that in terms of hey, now you have an emergency situation? What happens in that case?
No, so state aid is always a year behind. So we would be caught up in the following year. So we would report that information in the ST3 for that year, and it would be applied again to the following year's governor's budget.
Is the catch-up that they give you? Like if you...
Yeah, so they based it,
Okay.
so if there was an increase in Beds Day, for example, we would be reporting those projections after Beds Day in our ST3.
Okay.
And the governor runs her budget based on the ST3 information. That's why it's due by a certain date in the fall. And then the state reruns it after the state adopts the budget. So ultimately, it does catch up. And then the other thing that they use is a 3-year rolling average for the free and reduced price lunch students. So that's also different as well. So we would catch up eventually, but not necessarily in the same school year.
So we,
And I think, Roger, you make a great question, because if you think about it, in theory, right, you can only use the money that the voters approve you to use. Like tonight, you're voting on a maximum allowable tax levy. That's a cap. It's the most we can raise under the levy. We can't do more than that. So what do you do in a situation like that? You look at, do you have flexibility in the budget? Did you count on, let's say, 5 leave replacements, which you only got 2, so you would use some of that. You might be able to use, and then the board can declare an emergency conditional situation, which allows you to spend money that you might have in your reserves. But it's really not the best way to go about doing business. But, so New York City has within the year calculation on that. We're a year behind, as Alita explained.
so from a legislative session that you would have, that could potentially be essentially having the ability to say, hey, can we change this in a way that wouldn't be so penalizing? Is that kind of what that
Yeah,
would
I
be?
mean, I'd like to use the system New York City uses. That's what I would like to do.
Okay.
Just
All
that
right.
flexibility.
That
Right,
makes
You
sense.
get the money in the year that you have the issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I wouldn't give them something new or different. I think that would confuse them, but they
Yeah.
already have a system in the city, and why don't we use it?
But again, they do update it because if you remember, in some situations, foundation aid may go down. When you look at it from the governor's first projections and you compare it to the April's budget, you'll notice that there could be swings either way. So that's why we always compare budget to budget, because they do look at the data, and then you have to report on. So say the enrollment went up, they look at that data and it becomes part of her file for state aid when she does her report. And then if it changes after that in October, then it updates itself. But it's just usually typically a year behind, and certainly the free and reduced price lunch is part of the calculation, and that's over a 3-year rolling average.
And that's a pretty complex calculation in terms of how that works out and through computation of that aid, because it takes the wealth ratio plus the students.
It takes
plus the free
poverty,
and reduced lunch,
I
right?
believe it takes the poverty counts,
Yeah.
and the number of students K through 6, I believe. So it's within the foundation aid formula.
Yeah.
But that's one that's over a 3-year period that they calculate.
Yeah, and it would be interesting just to kind of, as you're looking at all of that and you're having a conversation from a legislative session, to just kind of look at like that time of year when we've seen like an influx of students coming in. I mean, because it's just telling, Just kind of feels like it would shortchange any district for that reason. Yeah. Thank you.
So the expense categories are up to date at this point. We know it's a $13 million increase, primarily associated with salaries and benefits. Capital went up. As you know, we're applying reserves for that, BOCES, and then other. So obviously, because we're a student and a people business, most of our expenses are going to come from salary and benefits. So the final budget stats for this upcoming school year, the tax levy increase, which is at its limit, is 3.28%. The total budget is $180,265,817. We are using our reserves. TRS, we're using 2.5. ERS, we're using 1.6. Capital, we're using 7.5. And unappropriated fund balance, we're using $5 million. So total fund balance and reserves is $16.7 million.
And again, just to emphasize what Alita just mentioned, those are one-time, if you take a look at the amount of money we're using from fund balance and reserve, that's a significant amount of money. It's huge. But if we didn't use that, we would be cutting more. So that's the amount of money we're using. Obviously, we've got capital, which is $7.5 million, and that's a one-time thing. We're taking money out of a bank account for capital, and we're using it to do a capital project. So that's fairly simple itself. The amount of money we're pulling from our rainy day funds for TRS and ERS, you do the math on that, that's significant. And we upped it recently based upon the fact that, we still have more money to cover. Our hope is that, looking at 5-year projections, that the increase won't be as significant next year. And again, going back to the riveting conversation on health insurance, and that's something else I'm going to bring up, Alita corrected me, it's actually more than the 8 million, it's 8.3 million. And the way I'm trying to frame it mentally, and it's one we talked about, was that Ossining got 11 million additional foundation aid between last year, this year, and next year. 8.3 million of that is going to health insurance. That's unconscionable. And NYSHIP takes care of towns, municipalities, police departments, corrections. It's one of the largest insurance providers in the state of New York. So we have a health insurance crisis, in my opinion, in the state of New York, to see this amazing amount of money that so many of you fought so hard for. I'm looking over it for years. I've been part of some of those campaigns back in the day. Just think about the framing of that. That's where, when Alita showed the slide on benefits, your benefits were higher than the salaries were. So this year we are being super aggressive in terms of the use of reserves and fund balance. The budget will require, even with all of this now, at the maximum allowable tax levy of 3.28%, we will still need to reduce the budget by $2.4 million. And we are addressing that amount through a cut of $638,448 in ongoing expenses and $2.262915 in staffing reductions. And these primarily, and not all, will be done through retirements, maximizing schedules, some reassignments to provide efficiency. This approach will include a number of reductions in force, particularly across all areas. And we are aware, even still with that, we have to come up with another $155,735 in ongoing costs. So we're not there yet. We are looking at certain non-personnel related areas to address that, another closer look at reserves. But this is a fluid process right now because we are currently in the midst of scheduling and programming in all areas throughout the district. As we are prioritizing this level of cuts, our philosophy is to limit the impact on front-facing positions with students. So this review of programs and schedules is a must. So, however, with that said, it is our goal, based on a bunch of meetings we have this week and early next week, that at our next board meeting on May 1st, we will have specifics as to where we land with all of those. So that's our overview. It's your first I know that long-term, the use of fund balance and stepping down off the use of it, many school districts are not in that position this year, and Ossining is one of them. So we are recommending to the board that you are aggressive on reserves, aggressive on the use of fund balance, and use every penny of your maximum allowable tax levy. Right. Oh, question mark, that's right. I thought that was a yes. I did that. I spoke at the right time. Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to ask the board if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to add. Go ahead, Trustee Bhattacharya.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that, that really stinks for us and municipalities and district is NYSHIP. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Alita, I think it was like $13 million over 2 years now. With it, right? It's a little over 13. That's last year and this year, because we had a $5 million hit last year and this year.
No, $5 million last year and this year.
Oh, that's combined
so
8.
That's combined. So
oh,
it's 5.3.
Okay, got it.
And then the projection for next year. So you're looking at 8.3.
8.3 combined. Okay, that's still really, really high, right? Yeah. And I know that we've had some conversations about looking at other alternatives, and the cost of actually even looking at a consortium probably is even penalizing that it's a much higher penalty. I wonder what we could look at, much more holistically. I'm not sure what else can be done. This just seems like it's a little bit more out of control by way of the New York State health insurance plan. And It's a bit crazy, and to the extent that we're able to look for options, alternatives, I think it just feels as though they're taking carte blanche increases. That's not just felt by us, it's felt everywhere, but still, I mean, there's gotta be at some point in time, there's gotta be, some sort of mechanism
So
for,
we're hoping, because that's cyclical, right? Because
Yeah.
we've seen NISHIP be less, that between ERS, TRS, and NISHIP, that will go down. That's our forecast, Roger. Lita and I do not have a crystal ball. That's our forecast, given the situation right now. And just looking at market trends on this, that it should go down.
Well, the last time we looked at it, and we got such a high increase for this school year, part of the explanation was left over from COVID. So that was some of the explanation. I'm
What-
not sure why it's increasing again at the same level.
Is that a
But
COVID
again, we're
catch-up?
hoping, like, our superintendent said that it's cyclical. Because the reason why we moved to night shift is because it was less expensive. And we saved a significant amount of money, and we're able to avoid layoffs. And they were the only group that would accept us at the time, because of our experience. So we just hope that it'll change soon. But the last time we looked in it, they said it was as a result of COVID.
I wonder if there's any opportunity out there at all, assuming that we're able to keep all benefits the same. I mean, I think all these costs end up getting passed down anyway, but keep everything the same, and, I don't know what is more competitive than
Well,
night
I
shift, if there
certainly
is
think
such a thing.
we agree philosophically, and Ossining has been there before, so we can continue to go down a parallel path, right? It's not going to solve our immediate problem, but clearly by highlighting the numbers with our elected officials for
Yeah.
folks to understand why we're in such a dire place, and for people to understand it impacts all areas of governance in New York State, not just public schools. So that's one approach we can do, just spotlighting it more, make people more aware. And then to really talk about, and offer suggestions. Are there different ways? Are there health insurance accounts that people could create for co-pays? Like, there are many more modern, if you will, approaches towards this, but whatever officials we have that can reflect on the governance boards, and not just NISHIP, but probably all of them, that might be in folks' best interest too.
Yeah.
We're in the education business, we're not in the health insurance business, and for obvious reasons, but that industry itself needs to right-size itself. These increases are unbelievable.
I couldn't agree more.
Just for the record, though, we did do that for, when we switched to night shift. We had health savings account cards for everyone. And we had a amount for single, and we had amount for families. So we did that to help with the move, so that they had money on their cards that they could use it for co-pays.
Right.
It is maddening just to see just how much in 2 years they've taken up, and how much that's taken away from possibility of doing the things that we could do to really add the things in our district that we want to, but $8 million, not a small sum.
Thank you. Any other trustees? Trustee Schnecker?
I'm going to say, kind of continue the conversation around it. I mean, these are historic hits in health insurance. If we had had these and didn't have the foundation aid, imagine where we would be right now.
Absolutely.
And one thing to keep in mind, just there are cycles where NISHIP and the private and the consortiums kind of, some years they have increases, some years they don't. You just have to keep in mind as you're looking at things, some of the consortiums have been down this year, but NISHIP's up, and part of that was because you have a very strong health insurance lobby at the state level at the end of the day that basically was trying to recoup things from COVID at the end of the day, and they've done that, and they've gotten, the brakes were put on that for a period of time. NISHIP isn't going to continue at this rate, or there's going to be much bigger issues in the state, so if you're looking to jump, be careful.
Right.
It might not be the right time to jump, maybe a 2-3 year period out, but if you jump next year, because if the consortiums then shoot up, they tend to kind of do this, so you just
Right.
have to keep a broad perspective on this at the end of the day.
Point well taken.
Trustee Melstein?
Christine,
Then-
did you want to go?
No, go ahead.
So first, Mary, thanks for the Passover greetings. I'm going to have to head out shortly for that, but I just say my piece really quickly on that. So first, I want to thank the board and the administration and all your staff for looking at this. I definitely get the sense you have looked under rocks. You've done whatever you need to do to minimize the pain. No one likes to see the word cut. No one likes to see the word reduction, and there's things that are in our control and out of our control. Obviously, yes, the health insurance, we absolutely want to meet all the obligations, contractual. We want to make sure we're doing everything we are doing to hire the best educators and staff. So we definitely need to continue to do that. Make sure we're working on, as we know, we have a stated goal, and it's in our every board meeting, of equity. We need to hit all of that. So I want to just say, I guess for the record, thank you for doing that. We're not a wealthy district. And so with this, if the board adopts the 328, as we've talked about and I've said, the calculation is $400 to $450 additional in tax request from an average of a $550,000 value home. It's not insignificant. It's not an insignificant amount for our community. So I think this board and previous boards have done a great job on the revenue side, meaning you've passed flat levies, you've passed negative levies, or very slightly increased. So you've done a really, really good job on that piece. I think, Mary, with your leadership, and taking a look and talking about already next year's budget, all these things, health insurance, Roger and Frank, as you mentioned, literally going line by line. I think we're just going to have to, be honest with ourselves. There are things in this district we absolutely must do. There are things that are kind of the nice to haves. And we want to do it all. There's nothing in this budget that I've looked at line by line that looks bad or it all sounds great. But the reality is we're not going to be able to keep going back to the community in this community for this type of ask year after year, unless, yes, Albany gets its act together. I saw that they're going to study foundation aid, spend $2 million on a study. Okay, we could debate that, talk about a good use of potential AI on that. You don't need to really spend $2 million on a study, but fine. They're going to study the foundation aid formula, come back December 1, and say, okay, it's good, it should change. We know it should change, and hopefully that would change for the better. But the reality is, again, our community is not one of the wealthiest. So going forward, as you're already looking at next year's budget, I think you're taking a fresh look at it. You've already talked about that. I would hope the rest of the board would agree we need to continue to do that. Not only look at the revenue side, but really what we're spending and making sure we're making the best possible choices for the best possible outcomes. And then, yes, driven by data. What programs are doing what qualitatively and quantitatively, and I think, Mary, you've already said that that's how you approach these things, so it will be great to see that next year. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you, and yeah, already, we want to take a breath, we got a lot more coming, but really looking towards next year on what we can afford to spend, and hopefully we'll get more aid, and then we'll be able to do what we need to do, so thank you.
So just to add to that, you're absolutely right. I think Alita and I, this is a 2-year, even 3, to right size to make sure revenues keep pace with expenditures. So as soon as this budget is adopted and approved by the voters, we start the work immediately on the next year's, looking at the whole process. And I'm looking forward to working with the board on how we revamp our budget process a little bit to kind of just build more awareness and understanding of each step. I want to thank again Alita and Don and our principals who had their first training in WinCap. So we're going to be directly using our data systems to upload everything. We're going to be tracking by object and function and coding. So again, we're putting in systems in place to make sure that all of that can be done easily and with more transparency for our community, and using our technology tools the way they were built to be used, right? I don't like when I have to pull things out to Excel, because I can make mistakes doing that. I like using the systems themselves. Right, Alita? Alita probably goes like this if I even attempt to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. But thank you.
Christine, Trustee Manginelli?
Sure, I just, I think we already kind of got there, but I just wanted to hear about our budget in the context of next year. Last year, when we were at the board table, we kind of planted the seeds of what to expect for this year, and then it became even worse than what we expected, right? And I just think it's important to acknowledge where we're at now in terms of next year, that we really already expect ourselves to be in a similar situation to where we are right now. And I just want people to have the opportunity to really come to terms with that, so that they can be at peace with it by the time this time rolls around next year. Because unless something, you know, like Rob said, unless New York State changes something about what they do, we are likely to find ourselves in this situation again next year. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if I just said what I needed to say, if that was actually a question, but
Well, I think it's, yes,
I just think we need to,
You-
we
you
need
pre-
to be realistic
yes.
about what our expectations
You
are with the
prepare
community.
for the worst, hope for the
Yes.
best, and you do parallel paths, you do Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and I think the point taken about the forecasting on the big expense drivers, TRS and ERS, you saw the math, it's all in the data, and health insurance, I think that we'll see the downward curve on that, and we'll continue our work along the lines of advocacy for additional money, and I certainly think, you know, by hiking the base of the maximum allowable tax levy, you put us at a much better place where the increase was closer to be flatter or closer to 2 than the next year, because you've already added that increase this year. So those things work in our favor, but again, we do need to start this work this summer. Right.
Trustee Bento?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, in terms of the conversation around preparing ourselves mentally, if you will, for next year and the impact that, you know, these increases are having, generally speaking, if you could briefly, and I know you touched on this last meeting, just reiterate, I guess, basically for the community about the difference, I guess, generally speaking, in the circumstances if we don't go to the 3.28 this year, and the impact how that, I guess, could potentially exacerbate the position that we're in next year, especially considering the amount of reserves that we're using to kind of put the Band-Aid on to get us to next year. I know it's a pretty complex question, but I'm wondering if there is a kind of just a general statement that you can make around the difference, the overall difference
I'll
in
give
that.
it a try, okay? So Alita, don't hesitate to correct me if I put my foot in my mouth or go the direction. So first of all, the thing I will say about the 3.28 is the maximum allowable tax levy. We went through those formulas. Alita did a great job showing the specifics about the exemptions, how they get plugged in, and how they impact the local levy. And I hope the community found that helpful. I will say, as part of our advocacy work, when we do go to our elected officials, I'm going to pull, you know, a little bit from what Rob and Frank have said. You know, reaching out to our elected officials, the first comment they'll make is like, well, did you go to your maximum allowable tax levy? Because if you haven't done that, you're asking other New Yorkers to fund your school district. So while we could make the argument that, well, our needs are greater, or, you know, we're not a wealthy community, they will use the regional cost index, they will use every data point that they have, so we have to adjust that and fix that, and I get that, and I think, you know, Frank, you and I have been at that a long time, that regional cost index work. But, so that's the first point about going to your maximum allowable levy. That, you know, it puts you in a place, it hikes your levy amount, and it gives you flexibility when you argue with elected officials. The next piece is that if the board wanted to adopt the 1.99, the levy will be about 2 million less, which creates the jump next year even bigger. You just create that right off the bat. And it's another 1.3 million in cuts. The way we were able to come up with the list of reductions here this year have been, we got a significant amount of retirements, we got some resignations, we were able to look at, you know, efficiencies through scheduling and program, and as you know, all know, I'm a scheduler and I'm enjoying those conversations. So we're looking at those positions that way. The next tier would be direct front-facing positions with kids. So we're trying to, I think I heard from the board multiple times that trying to save as many positions that spend the vast majority of their time front-facing and interacting with kids would be a goal of the board, as with ours. So that's why the scheduling system is really important, and taking a look at what positions, using data to drive that. So if we do go 1.3 million is a huge amount of money. So there was a headline, I didn't know you were going to answer this question, Melissa, I really didn't, but one of the headlines that I saw on the Buffalo News The larger the cuts, the harder it is to spare personnel, because that's a significant amount of money. And we're already proposing a reduction in force across all areas, tweaks absorbing of 1.6 million, and this would be an additional 1.3 million in that. So I think, as well stated, the budget book is out there. The district is not spending money irresponsibly. The board, the administrators adopted programs, classes for kids, contract services, cloud services, data services. I had a conversation earlier with Jessica about a new and exciting approach towards getting our data through the RIC today, so I'm excited about that. But again, we want to move our district forward. We want to continue to be that place that gets all these special grants, whether it's the P-TECH grant or New York Year Up, and some of those things require in-kind, meaning you have to have staff to do the work and put towards it. So you put a lot of those things in jeopardy. So it's a 2-3-year approach towards right-sizing what we're doing, and our recommendation is the 3.28 levy to help us get us there. I don't know if that helps.
To me, it does. I appreciate that. I know the answer was a bit, complex. I mean, the question was a bit complex, so I appreciate you being able to compact it like that. I'm wondering, I know this is just a general question, if there's a way to kind of, a rough estimate of how much of this 16 million in reserves, or almost 17 million in reserves that we're using, like a percentage-wise, 20, 25%, 30% would be a recurring type of cost that we're covering with that.
I'll let Alita address that. The easy one is just the capital, because it's a one-time expenditure.
Well, the capital, it's a one-time expense. And like I said at the last meeting, we are utilizing one of the capital reserves, the first one. There's still some money left over, and then we have the ability to increase the second capital reserve up to 50,000. I would say the biggest amount of money that we're taking is from the TRS reserve, and we're taking over $2 million there. That reserve, if you remember, we established in 2019, so there's not a significant amount of money, and there's also legal limitations on how much can be there. So I would say a good majority of that is being taken out of TRS. ERS, it's, I think we have 6 million in there, so we're taking out 1.6. And the only reason why we can take up to 1.6 is because that's how much we're paying. So we can't take more than what we're paying. So I would say that the full exhaustion of reserves is TRS. And then we are using and planned use of capital reserves to reduce the level of borrowing, obviously, so that, that makes sense. And then the 5 million in undesignated fund balance is something that we have to find within the budget with savings. So we've done those projections. We think we can meet that goal, but it's a significant amount of money. And when you talk about the 16 million, so next year, if you don't do the capital, you're already in a deficit of $9 million because you're funding with one-time expenses. So you already have a deficit starting for the 25-26 school year of the $9 million that you're using from reserves, not including capital. And then if you didn't do the 3.28%, then you would have $12.3 million that you would be in the hole to start off before you do anything in 25-26. So every percentage on the levy is about a little bit over $1 million. So again, if you didn't do anything and you left it at zero, you'd be cutting an additional $3.28 million on top of what we're cutting just to get to 3.2, plus the $9 million in reserves and unappropriated fund balance. So you would be starting, instead of 9 million, you'd be starting 12 million in the hole.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I just want to say, kind of reiterate the sentiments of my colleagues, how much I appreciate all the hard work and the number crunching that has gone into this. Like it's been stated, there's been previous years where we've had to make some pretty tough decisions as well around this. And, you know, I look back on that as well with just having anticipated to some degree that we'd be in another tough decision this year. I know while there are many districts that are facing similar circumstances, one thing that Ossining has always prided itself on is how we stand apart from all the things that we hold valuable to our community and to, most importantly, to our students. And so in my perspective, that's what makes this particularly hard, not just the impact that it's going to have, generally speaking, financially, but just all the kind of different pebbles and stones that went into building, the hard work, you know, sweat and tears in some instances that got us to be able to deliver what we consider to be a quality education, and still be striving to get to that. So this is bittersweet, which I think everyone, not even sweet, but it's bitter for us to even be in this position, which I think is a universal sentiment. But I in particular can't help but notice that slight difference in the position that we're in compared to some other districts is that we've always prided ourselves on being quite unique in the values that we hold dear here and what we consider necessary for our students. So it's with a heavy heart that you know, we find ourselves at this table making these decisions, and I appreciate all the hard work that went into making sure we have the best informed, you know, decision possible.
Thank you. Annie, do you have anything to add?
I said this before, but I remember last year when a possible tax levy was suggested, and it didn't seem to make sense just based on the foundation aid that we were receiving. And being here now, you've made a really strong case for why, even with that money, we need to get to the maximum tax allowable. It stinks, but I really appreciate the work that you've done to mitigate it as much as you can with the reserves and just how you're handling all the finances. I do have a question that maybe will come up later on how moving some of the facilities work to the budget is going to affect the bond, because that will also be voted on, and it's kind of like a package deal. So I don't know what we were thinking of before, maybe like 2.5% for the bond and maybe around a 2% levy. So I'm curious what it would look like with a 3.28% levy and a what percent bond.
So Alita and I heard that the board would like to see something as close to zero as possible, and we have taken that seriously as our marching orders, and that has basically launched a series of meetings that we are having. On May 2nd, they will be here almost for the entire day, going through everything line by line, updating the scope, and trying to give the board as many options and possibilities as possible in order to make an informed decision. And once we cook the latest numbers, you do cost escalation to hand them over to fiscal advisors. So that is our goal, and we're on a tight timeline for that. So on, you know, May 2nd, we want to just talk a little bit more about that work. We're not ready to give numbers just yet, but just talk about the work we're doing, and then talk about the EPC, because that's very exciting, and it's a green initiative, and there'll be things taking place this summer. And then to talk about the work at Park. We found an old foundation wall of a much older building, so it's kind of interesting, some of the work at Park that's taking place, but just to update folks. So again, that's our goal for our next board meeting next week. So understood 100%. We are working quite hard towards that zero. That's the other large stack, and we've had multiple conversations with the group along these ways. So that's what we're going to do towards the end of May, present the board with those options for you to make a decision.
Okay, all right. Frank, do you have something else?
Go ahead. Just a really quick question, just Alita, just going back to what, I think, what was just presented, is that any change of what's in, what's out, based on what we've seen previously?
No, it's the money, it's the dollar amount
Okay.
that we have to, you know, it's the levy amount and how we're going to get that. You've all seen preliminary plans and we're still cooking some of that, and my comment was I'll have firmer thoughts about what that looks like after exec session tonight, and then obviously later on this week into next week. But it's about the levy, and it's about how much we have to cut and the aggressive use of reserves that we're asking the board, are you comfortable with?
Okay.
Right?
So just to be clear, the board is voting on the budget amount tonight, and that amount is not going to change. So how we get there may be a little bit different, but we can't change the amount.
Right.
So
We have to get there.
we vote on the amount and the levy.
No, you don't vote on the levy. You vote on the levy when we, after the budget passes. There's a tax warrant that goes out to the jurisdictions, and that's when we give them the tax levy amount. But the voters vote on the budget amount, and you right now vote on the budget amount. But obviously, we've had the discussion, you're aware it's going to be 3.28%.
That's the levy itself.
It's not going to change. You'll see it because it becomes part of the agenda, the board agenda, and you have to approve it. That's when you'll see it, after the budget vote.
I mean, I think this is the best that we can do at this time. You know, I think, appreciate, as my colleagues have said, all the efforts that have gone into this. This is not insignificant. I will say, and Rob mentioned it, the money in the budget, the $2 million for an annual study by the Rockefeller Center to basically look at foundation aid formula across the board is something that we need to consider engaging with. That's unusual for them to go to the Rockefeller Center versus a legislative committee at the end of the day. I think we need to insist on transparency for that project, and I think there's many things here that we probably should be asking them to look at. You know, we're using 2000 census data. It's 2024.
Yes.
Ossining was different in 2000 than it was in 2024. The English language learner formula that you get reimbursed at is written for a different time when the costs were associated were very different. So it really returns very little money at the end of the day. That can't continue, and you should have lots of partners in the state that would also join you on that. Regional cost index. Why is Long Island reimbursed at the same rate as New York City at the end of the day? That's something that basically, that's millions of dollars. Millions of dollars.
Right.
If the regional cost index basically reflected for the lower Hudson Valley the way Long Island does, that would be a significant bump.
And that was a political decision, I'll just say it.
Well, it was at a time when
Yeah.
basically the New York State Senate was run essentially by the Long Island Republicans at the end of the day. And that's how, unfortunately, there's a game that you do have to participate in here, or you are sitting at cuts at the end of the day. And your point about New York City, so New York City gets the best of their beds date or their highest point over the course of a year. That's half the students in the state. Why should we be treated any differently,
Yes.
especially when you have other districts that are seeing similar increases to New York City? So these are things that
I'm going to bring up.
Mary's going to bring up, and it's important for this board to basically
Yes.
push that the Rockefeller Commission looks at it, because otherwise it'll be a year from now and you probably won't see much in the change, and we'll be talking about, we know we have things to cut. We have to, that are going to be cut if we don't roll up the sleeves and go at this. So I would encourage us, if we don't want to be in a similar spot or worse next spring, that we really put our efforts there.
Yes, go ahead. Roger.
So I'll just say this much. I think we have tried to get everything scraped line by line, looking for every possible avenue to get us to a number that we were comfortable with. And I think the fact that you're using reserves now, even in a place where, we're having to look at ways to cut and drive up more efficiency in what we're doing, I think all of the questioning and everything we've gone into has been probably the most thorough in my 3 years here. And I think it's been thorough enough that we've tried to uncover every stone that there is to be able to go after to see what we could potentially do to mitigate this. I do think there's a lot of things that we would love to have that we aren't able to do, because we've had to kind of take a step back and say, let's hold off on that, because we're right now just trying to keep our head above water with the fact that we scraped, cut, chased, unturned everywhere. So I'm just going to say I am traditionally one who would be very much vocal about making sure that we keep that tax levy as close to zero as possible. But given the amount of rigor we put into it, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all of the patience you and the team have put in, especially sometimes going to very, very hard questions that are probably more sensitive and probably much more a need to look at, right? So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I think the only thing I'll add, and this was mentioned by Mary and maybe by Frank as well, during the times that we were going up to Albany and advocating extensively for foundation aid, I do remember sitting in a room, I think it was with the Division of Budget, honestly I don't remember the titles, but we were asked pointedly what our maximum allowable total levy was in years past and what we went with, and essentially told point blank, if you're not going up to the max, why are you coming and looking at us to fix that for you? So it was a credibility issue when we were going up to Albany to request them to consider serious changes. And that stuck out at me at the time, and I know that this is a difficult budget season. Seems like they're all relatively difficult budget seasons, but I do agree that we have asked our superintendent and cabinet to really dig in and audit all of the numbers and the recommendations, and I feel very confident that that has been done. And I do support this budget. I don't see, I think we've really tried to find a way to shave it down, but I am confident that there is no way at this time that I could support. So I'm in favor of the proposal. Thank you. Thanks everyone for the hard work on it as well. All right, anything else before we go to public comments? All right, we have our first public comment session of the evening. This is a request for public comment on agenda items. We have a couple of audience members. I will first open it up to members who are here in person. Do you have anyone would like to come to the microphone and make a comment? Okay, there being no show of hands, I'll now turn public comment over to our virtual audience and ask our clerk Illy if we have any virtual hands raised. All right, no virtual hands raised at this time. Also, we had mentioned a meeting in May. I think the meeting's on May 1st, not May 2nd. I'm just clarifying. Okay, got it.
Right, Ellie, May 1st. That's Wednesday, and it's a Wednesday,
Okay.
not a Tuesday. Don't show up on Tuesday.
All right, I'll now continue on with our consent agenda business of the board, and I will take a motion for 4.1.
So moved.
Second.
4.1, resolution to adopt the superintendent's proposed budget for the 2024-2025 school year. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay, thank you everyone again for your hard work. I will take a motion for 4.2.
So moved.
Second.
4.2, resolution designating the officials to act at the special district meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? I'll take a motion for 4.3, resolution to establish a board governance committee.
So moved.
Second.
All right, 4.3, resolution to establish a board governance committee. This is a committee that we, any discussion? I'll start us off. This is a committee that we have been talking about for a few months now. I think I'm going to give Trustee Mangiamelli credit for bringing this back to us from, I think it was a West Putt event, learning event, where we don't remember who, but there was some trustee from some district in the region that had mentioned that they had a committee like this. So I'll just read an abbreviation of this. This is a self-governance committee intended to support the board collaboratively with the goal of encouraging and assisting the board in maintaining compliance with the board handbook, monitoring board goals, assisting the board with tracking board proposed initiatives and inquiries, aiding and ensuring timely response to outreach from the community, and promoting board development and self-evaluation. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Okay, I'll take a motion for 4.4.
So moved.
Second.
4.4, resolution to appoint board members to the Board Governance Committee. This would be effective immediately for the 2023-2024 school year. And as a reminder, this committee will have board trustees on it now, and it will also be discussed at the reorganization meeting at the end of June. And that would be for the 24-25 school year. So do we have anyone who would like to be on this committee presently for the remainder of this school year?
I will.
Okay, do we have two other interested trustees?
That's the calendar committee, right? Okay.
Self-government.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'd like to be on that.
Okay, Melissa Banta. Can I get a third?
I can do it.
Annie? Okay, great. Okay, so I think I will. Illy, do we vote on this and then I say the resolved portion? It's just to a point, so I don't have to read that, right? Okay. All right, any further discussion on 4.4? We will have Christine Mangiamelli, Melissa Banta, and Annie Gomez on the self-governance, or the governance committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention.
I have a
Thank-
question. It's probably redundant now, but, if the governance committee is supporting board leadership, and then there's board leadership on the governance committee, is that,
I think it was changed to support the board.
okay, the wording as it stands now says leadership, board leadership.
Are you sure? Because I have it as resolved that the
Well,
committee's.
the one online, maybe you have a meeting or something, does that?
In the printed agenda that I got, it says,
The fourth bullet down says assisting board leadership and ensuring timely response from the board. Maybe that's just like, we can just.
yes,
that.
that's one of the
can,
potential action steps. I don't have a problem with that. I think like that's just sort of like a watchdog to make sure that nothing slips through the crack.
Okay, just a
But-
question.
I do think there was some discussion that, because I think initially the first couple of sentences did have support board leadership, and that was changed to the board.
Yeah, I get that. I was just saying in terms of whoever else might want to have been on the committee, if there's board leadership already on the committee, just kind of pointing that out, but I get it. That's fine.
Okay. I will take a motion for 4.5.
So moved. Second.
4.5, resolution to establish a calendar committee. Any discussion? I'll just go into a description of this quickly. This is a proposed calendar committee to establish a standing committee of the board, and really it's an advisory committee that will provide input and comments regarding the district calendar in areas where there is discretion, to be in compliance with the law and the regulations that are set by New York State. And the idea is that it will adhere to collective bargaining contractual provisions, local BOCES calendar, and maximize instructional days for students, while also taking in feedback from a set of stakeholders and cultivate a sense of belonging and unity across our diverse school district. So that is the sort of blurb of this committee. Is there any other discussion?
Yes. The way it states now says Board of Education members, an administrator, educator, and a parent is very singular. in that regard? Is there, I know we don't want necessarily committees to be, dozens and dozens of people, but is there a reason that we have singular in terms of, like parent input?
Well, that was my input, that's what I was used to working with, but I don't want a huge committee, but
Of course.
certainly just feedback, and I was used to, either you reach out to your parent organizations or different groups. I mean, you can easily expand upon it. This is an advisory committee. It doesn't have any, God bless you, any power other, because the law is really pretty clear as to whose responsibility is it. And you have to follow the commissioner's regulations of Part 175.5. And about 80 to 85% of it will be dictated by law and governance and contractual responsibility, so it's that subtle little extra piece. But, I'm just, as long as we got those people in there, we can add an S to it if you want, but I wouldn't want a too big a committee just to do the
I agree
work.
with that. I just wanted to make sure that the singularity of parent didn't, stop us from having at least more than one.
Right. If you got-
I understand there's
There's
regulations,
categories,
around what we can actually change, but if we're looking for perspectives, I just want to make sure we have opportunity to expand those perspectives.
It's my way, when I'm reading this, this is basically a requirement that we have no more than 3 board members, an administrator, educator, and a parent, that as, I'm reading that as an at least.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a group.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to be careful with this, with the language of board committees versus board advisory committees. I think to this point, I guess what I would propose is that we change this to the calendar advisory committee. I think if you look at our list, there's committees where the board has liaisons with the community and others, and their advisory committees versus board committees, which would be, with the exception of the audit, pretty much are exclusive to the board and
Right.
administration. So I would propose we might want to change the title of that to be consistent. And the only other ask I have with it just would be is that this committee make sure I've raised this issue with BOCES. When our calendars don't align, our students lose instructional time.
67 of them.
Yeah,
67 of them. I am very keenly aware of
Yeah.
my responsibility along those lines, yes.
I think the part of the challenge with this work, and I certainly support an inclusive calendar, is trying to get others in the region to also move to an inclusive calendar. And I
Right.
think, so I would just, while they're not listed as a member of the committee, I would hope that the advisory committee would really work to engage them and do that soon, because that calendar
Yeah.
gets set well in advance.
Yeah, and that would be, I see that as my responsibility, making sure it's clear from BOCES. And I used to do it for like 20 years for the region, and they gave me a hard time and nominated me again last month to do it again, but my colleagues. But I certainly think also feedback on our paper calendar and how we can use a paper calendar, not only just to inform and get dates, but also to help educate people, like when sundown, a holiday starts at sundown, what are they, just star them so people are aware. So we want to make sure that the paper calendar is, we have to adopt a legal document for the AT6 and the SA 129 for state aid. That is pretty much like boilerplate, the legal holidays, what they are. It goes up to state ed into some system, but now how the nuances of this plays out. And I have to keep, always, I often say it's like you're juggling 3 balls. I have to make sure that the dates match the 990 for secondary, the 900 for elementary hours. So you have to juggle with all of those as well. And keep in mind the rating day and the days allowed for exams, and when you're doing conference days, how does that impact the hours? So as a data person, I used to run multiple Excel spreadsheets just to keep track of all that, but yeah, right.
Okay, any further discussion? Oh, I'm wondering if I should maybe take a motion to change the title to Calendar Advisory Committee. Why don't I do that? Do I have a motion to orally amend 4.5 to read 4.5 resolution to establish a Calendar Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? I'll now take a motion on 4.5 as amended, resolution to establish a calendar advisory committee. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Did we take a motion in a second on that? Sorry. Oh, we did already.
We did, yep.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay. I will now take a motion to amend 4.6 to read resolution to appoint board members to the calendar advisory committee. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? I'll take a motion for 4.6 as amended, resolution to appoint board members to the calendar advisory committee. Again, this is, I'll start us in the discussion. This is for the remainder of this school year. This will have to be rediscussed at the annual reorganization meeting and redone for the 24-25 school year. Do I have any trustees interested in participating in this committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Roger? Rob?
And
Annie? Okay, any other interest, or are we good with that? Okay. That's Roger Bhattacharya, Rob Melstein, and Annie Gomez on the Calendar Advisory Committee. Any further discussion? Or did we already vote on this? I'm losing my mind. We just voted on it, right?
we had talked about this previously with the three of us
No,
doing
no,
it,
I
but-
mean, did
no.
we
Oh,
actually
no,
vote
we
on
didn't.
4.6
No.
as amended? I can't remember. Ellie, do you have us on it?
No.
No,
No.
right? Okay.
think
Any
I'm
further
voting.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay, anything from 4.7 through 4.9 that folks would like me to break out? I'll take a motion for 4.7 through 4.9.
So moved.
Second.
4.7, resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting/executive session of March 5th, 2024. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? 4.8, resolution to approve the minutes of the Saturday workshop meeting of March 9th, 2024. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? 4.9, resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting of March 13th, 2024. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? I will take a motion for 5.1.
So moved.
Second.
5.1, motion to accept recommended placements of special education students. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? I'll take a motion for 6.1.
So moved.
Second.
6.1, resolution regarding interfund transfers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? In section 7, that's 7.1 through 7.8, is there anything I should break out? I'll take a motion for 7.1 through 7.8.
So moved.
Second.
7.1, resolution regarding professional staff resignations. 7.2, resolution regarding support staff resignations. 7.3, resolution regarding professional staff appointments. 7.4, resolution regarding support staff appointments. 7.5, resolution regarding professional staff appointments before and after school programs. 7.6, resolution regarding per diem substitute appointments. 7.7, resolution regarding approval of school volunteers. 7.8, resolution regarding support staff requests for a leave of absence. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Thank you to our volunteers. We are now in our second public comment session of the evening. This is for anything that is education related. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to make a public comment? No one is coming to the microphone, so I will turn it over to our clerk and see if there is a show of hands. Okay, no virtual show of hands for public comment this evening. I will now transition to board reports and dialogue. Does anyone have anything on their dialogue list for this evening?
I just wanted to give a little shout out to a professional development that I'm going to be going to. The last WESPA advocacy meeting of the year is on May 5th, and it's going to be focusing on putting forward NISBA resolutions. It's something I'm interested in going in because as a board, we've discussed the potential of putting forth a resolution, particularly as it pertains to the faith-based affordable housing legislation that's proposed in the State Assembly and Senate. So I think as a board, we'll have to get together and do that. Whether or not we do that after I attend this professional development, perhaps it would behoove us to wait for me to attend this so that I have a better grasp on what I'm doing. But I'm just putting it out there. If anybody else wants to attend it, I'm going to attend it. It's free. It's an hour-long Zoom, I think.
Sorry, when is it again?
May 5th. There's an email I can forward it out, you know.
That's on Sunday, right?
No.
Well, as part of the newly established board governance committee, you can email all of us with all of the
Oh,
details.
I must have the date wrong. I just put it wrong. I put it correctly in my calendar. I'll email you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I will do that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Any further dialogue?
It's the 6th, so.
I feel like we've been meeting every week, so.
Yep.
All right. I will take a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person or corporation or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person with legal counsel. Does anyone want to move?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?